Hi, everyone. Can you hear?
Yes.
Do we have Zoom going?
Yes, we do.
Okay. All right. So I'm gonna call the meeting to order. Our first rule. That's what I asked.
Stand up.
So our first thing we're gonna do is do Pledge of Allegiance. So Vesta.
We have a real flag tonight. I pledge
Allegiance
to the flag of the
the
United
United
States
States
The United States of America,
and to the republic
the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's remember that, please.
Can you hear me now? Okay, I'll use that then. We're gonna do roll call. Let's do the LRRMAC first.
Chair Pitt Marquez de la Plata.
Here.
Vesta Cope-Sticks.
Here.
Betsy Van Dyke. Here. Mike Nichols.
Here.
Vicky Clues. Here. Lucy Hardcastle. Here. Kathleen Dow.
Here.
Patty Thayer.
Here.
You. And
The COSMAC.
the Postman. Scott Farmer.
Here.
Drew McCalley.
Here.
Caroline Madden. She will be here shortly. Not yet. Gallagher. Kate Patul. Marty Campbell.
Here.
And we have Ginny Nichols, who will be joining us under AB 2449. And she's can notify us of that, Ginny, and let us know if there's anybody 18 years of age or older in the room with you.
Yes, I'm here, and no, there's nobody 18 years or older other than myself.
Great, thank you. Okay, let's move to the agenda. Approval of the agenda. Do I need both? But the agenda is the same for
I
both.
can do the agenda all together
Okay.
as well.
Okay. So can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
I second it.
And then can we take a roll call, please?
Pitt,
Yes.
Betsy. Yes. Mike.
Yes.
Vicky. Yes. Lucy. Yes. Kathleen.
Yes.
Patty.
Yes.
Drew.
Yes.
Liz. Yes. Shay.
Yes.
Marty.
Yes.
Ginny.
Yes,
Thank you. Did I, oh, because I put you down a second. Scott and Scott.
Yeah.
Did I call you Vesta?
No,
Because you made the motion, sorry. And Vesta?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're going to go through the consent agendas. And since we have two different bodies here, we're going to do them separately. We're going to go through the LRRMAC consent agenda first, and then Scott is going to handle the COSMAC. So we have a few things on the consent agenda, approval of the minutes, and then there are some bylaw amendments too. Does anyone have any questions on those, or do you want to move to approve?
A second.
Roll call, please.
Pitt,
Aye.
Vesta. Yes. Betsy. Yes. Mike.
Yes.
Vicky.
I heard that I did ask that my name was called.
Yes, I will correct that.
It's usually me.
Lucy. Yes. Kathleen.
Yes.
Patty. Abstain. Thank you.
Okay, Scott?
Hi, Scott Farmer, Representative Timber Cove, Coast Mac. On the consent calendar, we have 3 items, May 18 minutes, June 22nd minutes, and bylaws amendments. I spoke with our chair, Brian Lubitz, about the bylaws amendments, and he's going to form an ad hoc committee to review the bylaws that are in this packet. Nonetheless, we're going to put it forward tonight as a consent calendar and change it if an ad hoc committee feels it's necessary later. So do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So move.
Marty, do you want to be a second?
Yes, second.
That's Jake. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And a roll call, please.
Scott,
Yes.
Drew,
Yes.
Caroline? Yeah. You can come sit up at the table. Welcome. Liz? And Ginny?
Yes,
And you didn't call my name. I vote yes too.
Oh, Marty, I'm sorry. I put you down as seconding. Thank you. Marty? Yes. And Shay? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yep.
All right, now we're gonna move to the next section was if there is something from any council member from either River or Coastmax that have something that's not on the agenda that you want to bring up here. I do ask that you keep those comments as brief as possible because we have a lot to go to. Vesta. You didn't even have to raise your hand.
So, I'm basically talking about the, how, you want me to do it here, okay?
Hey, if you want, I'll just read what I wrote instead of ad-libbing it. The housing element update and Board of Supervisors approval permits Sonoma's presentation of the final EIR on Sonoma County's housing element, which is included in the general plan, was a proud moment of democracy in action. Our 5th district was well represented, especially with people from Grayton and Forestville. This is an imperfect plan, but state mandates and pressure from a policy called Builder's Remedy, which places development in the power of contractors rather than the public, push this EIR through a 5-0 vote for approval. But Forestville got some much needed and important changes thanks to Linda Hopkins' advocacy. No one wanted FOR 4 at the end of a long driveway off a single lane road to be built into 60 units of housing, including the property owner. Although there is no eminent domain that would force this family to build, once zoning to high density housing is established, it would be hard to go back to low density in the future, which basically forces this family to never develop their land for any housing. As Linda stated, this property is a death trap in fire emergencies. There was no way this many people, in addition to those already living on this road, could make it out alive if fire came raging up their hill. Linda Hopkins asked for FOR 4 to be removed from the plan in exchange for FOR 6 being put back in as a split lot in order to accommodate both housing and Forestville's much coveted skate park. The revised housing element went forward to a full vote of approval to head to the state for review. Forestville was saved from a mistake that we don't have to live with now. Forestvilleans also came out in force for the environmental cleanup for FOR 1, the electrovector plant next to Forestville School and Cars Drive-In Restaurant. This site is perfect for affordable housing, especially for seniors who prefer to live within walking distance of restaurants, shops, our downtown park, and West County Trail. The toxic site must be cleaned up. It is a visual blight as well as a hazard to our community. Thank you every Forestvillean who attended and spoke up on behalf of locals who feel strongly about having a voice in the future of Forestville. Thank you for democracy.
Thanks, Vesta. Anyone else have something that's not on the agenda? Betsy.
Just wanted to announce quickly that Russian River Pride is in fully planned and moving forward. And the chair of the committee, Cleve Jones, is here, and he's going to give us an update on that. It will be October 13th, 14th, and 15th, and includes a parade and loads of community activities for people from all over the community, not just not just gay people, but everybody, kids, seniors, everybody. So, so stay tuned for Cleve to give us a full update.
All right, any other non-agenda items that anyone wants to, I'm talking out there too. Anybody? Don't see any hands or anything. All right, great. Now we're gonna move to our updates from the senator and the supervisor.
So I had hoped that Senator McGuire as the headliner would go first, but I will do my best to warm up the crowd. I feel like I should have brought some magic tricks or maybe some jokes or like my high-powered auctioneer voice, right? Maybe say hot damn a few times and you guys will get in the spirit. So I will start with some relatively mundane kind of legislative updates from the county and then happy to take questions. And then as soon as Senator McGuire arrives, we'll hand over the stage to him because it's not too often that you get to see your state senator. Well, actually this state senator is always everywhere all the time. So you do get to see him, I think, more than most. But it's exciting to have him out in Guerneville tonight, and I can't wait for him to get here. So a couple big things. We actually haven't convened as a municipal advisory council since the local coastal plan was unanimously approved by the Board of Supervisors, which means that it is going on to the Coastal Commission. This is a very exciting step that we have been working on for decades, actually, and myself at least for the last 8 years. Additionally, as was mentioned earlier, the housing element was approved by the Board of Supervisors on Tuesday. And we were actually able, I'm pretty proud of the work that we did in the Lower Russian River in particular, because there are a number of very unsuitable parcels that both represented fire hazards, sort of egress hazards. In some cases were entirely landlocked and didn't actually have access to a public road. Some of them had critical public facilities on it, like Sweetwater Springs water storage, which you don't want to displace water storage in order to bring more housing. That doesn't make sense. And we also had some competition with other community uses, such as the skate park. So we were able to remove the most problematic parcels in both Guerneville and Forestville. Unfortunately, the same couldn't be said. There was some movement in Grayton, but it was more challenging to actually remove parcels from Grayton because it was designated as a high resource area. And in order to meet the quota that was imposed by the state, we simply couldn't kind of shift it elsewhere. And for those of you who aren't aware, there's an 8-year cycle. So every 8 years, the state says, hey, we're going to build this many housing units. And then it's handed down to a regional authority, in this case, the Association of Bay Area Governments, or ABAG, who then says, okay, all the jurisdictions are going to take, sort of X number of units. And our number of units in Sonoma County skyrocketed. And we actually had more units than urban areas that have twice our overall population and are located on the BART line. So, we were given a kind of undue burden. It's kind of ironic because the state on one hand is saying, don't build in high, wildfire zones, right? We're going to make it more difficult. And yet we were also sort of tasked with trying to figure out how to put more than 3,000 units of housing just in unincorporated Sonoma County. That's not even the cities. Nevertheless, we persisted, and I think that we sent the best possible solution to the state, and that we also have a lot of lessons learned for the future. I also want to give everyone a heads up on vacation rentals. We are planning on kicking off a series of meetings in the Lower Russian River around vacation rentals. And as we've spoken about in the past, the pendulum has kind of swung from one side to another, and we are now kind of trying to actually get into a neighborhood by neighborhood approach for what should concentrations look like, what should caps look like, where should we and shouldn't we have vacation rentals? Because right now we're under sort of a standardized countywide ban in certain zoning, particularly in R1. And in the Lower Russian River, that doesn't always make sense, because in some cases, that's literally prime waterfront property. The houses are all over $1 million. That's not really the workforce or affordable housing parts of the Lower Russian River. So how do we kind of set aside those areas that we know have long time been, workforce and affordable housing, housing for families, housing for locals, versus those areas that have traditionally been more sort of tourist, of a tourist economy. And so what we want to do is come to all of you, community by community, and actually go in with a highlighter and have some, really strategic conversations and use kind of a, scalpel rather than a sledgehammer, which is kind of the approach has been more sledgehammer in the past. So that is going to be coming up. We were also moving forward with a tree protection ordinance this year in Sonoma County, and the living wage ordinance is also coming back to the Board of Supervisors next month. In other legislative agenda items, which I know that some of you all have been working on for a long time, and I know it's not the sexiest of topics, but on-site wastewater treatment systems or septic systems, that policy is coming back before the Board of Supervisors for a vote, which will then move it on to sort of the state board for approval. And this is a big deal, right? Because we are also under the Russian River total maximum daily load, which is going to, in some cases, kind of put us into a straitjacket of what we can and can't do on our properties, when it comes to potentially forced requirements to upgrade septic systems, right? And so we're working very hard along with an ombudsman position that we have hired, that is currently occupied by a gentleman named Michael Macdisi, to try to come up with creative solutions for residents so that you don't find yourself in a situation where you are literally priced out of your own home by regulations, right, that are designed to improve water quality. We all want to improve water quality. We all want to have a drinkable, swimmable, fishable Russian River, but we want to make sure that we aren't pricing locals out of their homes and, quite frankly, your life savings and all of your equity that's invested in your home. So those are a few critical topics. I mean, you know what? I could not be here and not mention Moscow Road. We have definitely just heard in the past few days some extreme frustration from residents. So the good news is that the construction has started. The good news is that the contractor that we have hired is aggressively working to address not just one slide, but both of the slides at the same time. The bad news is that we've heard a lot of concerns about the detour up Starrett Hill. And then the even worse news is that both our number 1 and number 2 in Sonoma County Public Infrastructure, that would be Johannes and Janice, are both out of office right now. And so we are desperately trying to, get a contact point for the contractor and try to address some of the concerns that residents are raising. And Elise might have an update on that. Okay. Yeah. Or you want me to, yeah. She says she just heard from Johannes 2 minutes ago. So luckily he checks his cell phone on vacation. There you go.
He's in Sacramento working, actually. He just texted me a couple minutes ago saying that he will be talking to the contractor first thing tomorrow morning and changing the routes so that it isn't such a problem. So, when Johannes dives in, he'll help. So that should happen first thing tomorrow morning. And thank you for your patience. I've also heard from the traffic coordinator that this particular closure is slated to be through September 1st, which is 8 days. It's not 3 weeks as expected. So we will fix it and it will be shorter. So both good.
And I also want to mention it for sort of residents of Monterey and Villa Grande that we are going to be planning on having some kind of a walkthrough of the detour and reaching out to local business owners and anyone who is interested to try to just improve signage and flow. There's been a lot of kind of questions back and forth of, what is the best way to set this up? I'm now talking about the Little Bridge closure, right? And how do we kind of make something that makes sense for locals? And so we've had kind of conflicting suggestions, and we kind of want to get an on-site consensus-based project process going. And so we'll be working to set that up. And then finally, something that I actually wanted to especially highlight for Betsy and the Pocket Canyon residents, I just learned that we actually have a bunch of purple air sensors at our Northern Sonoma County Air Pollution Control District, which is a board that I serve on, that are open for free for any community group who is interested in installing it. And so when I was looking at the purple air map, right, if you go online to the purple air map, I was looking for areas that don't have sensors. And actually there is not a single sensor in Pocket Canyon, which is why I'm looking at Betsy. And so the Municipal Advisory Council itself would actually, and this is also applies to the coast. I noticed that there were none in Fort Ross, for instance. You can actually apply as a Municipal Advisory Council body and then, work with a local resident to install it on their home. The only requirements are it needs to have power, it needs to have Wi-Fi. I have one myself. It's very easy to install. Trust me, I'm not great at installing those kinds of things. And the great thing is that it provides you real-time data on air quality. And as we are, of course, in the midst of fire season in California, and we are not out of the woods yet in Northern California, even though Southern California got quite a bit of a swamping of rain, you know, it's a great time to look at those sensors and move forward with that. So I'll open it up to any questions. And I understand that Senator McGuire is like 3 minutes out. I know. Even if it's interrupted, you know, it'll go on and then it'll go off. And so it'll turn gray if it doesn't have the signal, and it'll pop back on. So.
Update on the Silver Estates transfer to Save the Redwoods, and then the other one, apparently the tribes and various entities have come up with a solution for the Eel River diversion as well. What's the update on those?
Great question. So Silver Estates is very, very exciting news. So we Save the Redwoods actually went public with the transaction, which signals a tremendous amount of confidence that they will be able to complete that transaction. And this is something that we've been working on at the county. Gosh, we've been working with community advocates in the neighborhood for years. And then I cold called the property owner to see if he would be interested in selling. And lo and behold, he was. We arranged for a meeting at the site. And just for those of you who are not familiar, there was a large scale timber harvest plan that was proposed for Silver Estates, which is, you know, very sort of close to a lot of residences, you know, in Guerneville. And so anyways, we arranged a site visit. We brought Save the Redwoods out. They immediately saw the value in preserving the property, and they are the lead on the acquisition. We will then use taxpayer dollars from the Agricultural Preservation and Open Space District to help backfill their purchase. They can move faster than we can as government. And there was a timeline, there was a deadline for the seller. He was going to start harvesting, right, this spring if he did not have a serious offer from a conservation buyer. So we are moving forward with that. And I also neglected to mention for the Coast MAC that Chancellor Ranch fee acquisition went before the Board of Supervisors and received unanimous approval on Tuesday. So Chancellor Ranch will be the newest regional park in our regional park system. And that is also something that I've been working on for a couple of years. It's very exciting. So, and I also want to give a shout out actually to our 5th District Planning Commissioner and former 5th District Supervisor Eric Koenig-Schofer, who reached out to let me know that the seller was interested in selling, arranged a meeting, and we as county government swooped in before any super rich person from the city could come up and turn it into a private mansion space. So we will have guaranteed public access forever on that property, which is very, very exciting. And it's immediately adjacent to another regional park. So, and what was the other question? Was, oh, the Eel River. Yeah, so, you know, there are kind of a variety of solutions still being worked on with respect to the Eel River diversion and the Potter Valley project. And so there isn't anything final yet. This is a critical water source for the Russian River watershed that has been, you know, in place for, I believe, more than a century. And so with PG&E decommissioning that, we then need to look at some way of essentially creating a run of the river solution that can benefit fish in both sort of sides. And it will likely also involve a dam removal, specifically sort of dewatering. What is the name of the reservoir in Lake County? Someone, I've been there, Lake Pillsbury. Thank you. I've been there. I've been accidentally shot at by hunters because I wasn't wearing orange. Anyways, another story for another time. So don't go in there without wearing orange, Lake Pillsbury, just word to the wise. All right, other questions? Oh, and I see our special guest has arrived. So can we get a warm welcome for Senator McGuire? And before I hand over the mic, I am going to do a little bit of shameless bragging, and that, you know, I don't know how the man does it and is everywhere all the time. And what I think is the largest Senate district in the state. Yeah, largest by geographic area. And not only that, but, you know, representing a rural area and then really interfacing with a bunch of elected officials who are primarily from urban municipalities who have different priorities and different perspectives. We absolutely punch above our weight in Sonoma County at the state of California because of this guy. So I don't think there's a harder working state senator in the state, and I mean that, and I really appreciate your advocacy. So it's good to see you, and thank you all. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
Hey, everybody, how's it going? It is so good to see you. First and foremost, I just want to say thank you so much for allowing me to be here and grateful to be able to work with you each and every day. And I think we need to give it up to Supervisor Hopkins. She does an amazing job on behalf of the coast, the river, the West County. And she is always saying thank you, but I got to be really candid. She is He is tenacious, incredibly smart, and we are so grateful to be able to work with you each and every day. And I got to be honest, West County is so lucky to have you as an advocate. You do amazing work. So thank you so much. To the chairs and to the Max, thank you so much for allowing me to be with you. If it's all right with folks, going to do a little bit of a lightning round of some of the top issues that are facing all of us here in the Golden State. Is that all right? And then obviously want to be able to open it up and hear from each and every one of you. That's the most important part of tonight, is hearing your comments, your concerns, your criticisms, and really, again, just want to say thank you for allowing me to be with you tonight. So would like to talk a little bit about the state budget. Is that all right with folks quickly? So look, here's the bottom line. The state of California has the strongest rainy day fund that we've ever had in the history of the state. We have about $37 billion in our rainy day fund. It is one of the highest rainy day funds in all of the United States of America. And where I believe that we need to focus are on the people and the programs that make the state strong. One of my top priorities in the Senate is on K-12 public education. And I do also believe that the budget is a value statement. If you value our kids in strong public schools, then we have to invest. Am I right? So let's talk about where we've been and where we're going. Back in 2015, the state of California was dead last in the nation. Dead last in the nation in per pupil spending, about $8,900 per student. Fast forward to this current school year, we are just under $24,000 per student per year. Now, is money everything? Absolutely not. But this state will never fully succeed if our schools aren't fully funded. And we, for the first time in 50 years, the state of California will be in the top 10 in the nation in per pupil spending. And we are forever grateful to each of you, the taxpayers that continue to invest. So thank you. So look, also, we need to focus on making college more affordable and accessible. If you take a look at the top 2 reasons for bankruptcy in the United States of America, number 1, unpaid medical bills. Number 2, college debt. And for the first time in about 60 years, state of California now has tuition-free community college for about 98% of all students. And the reason why that is so important, 60% of all students that go to a UC or a CSU start at a community college. We have to drive down the cost of college, make it more affordable and accessible for young people and for moms and dads who may come back into the workforce. We couldn't be more excited now. About 98% of all students are able to go tuition free for their first 2 years here in the state of California. A couple other really quick issues: universal school meals. State of California now provides breakfast and lunch to every student from all backgrounds in every K-12 public school. And what we know is that hunger is one of the #1 reasons my kids aren't successful in the classroom. And we also know, especially in our neck of the woods, right? It is absolutely critical that we're able to give kids a robust, healthy, and tummy-filling breakfast and lunch. Now, all school meals are free to every student in the state of California at all public schools. Last thing I'll just mention is we're finally looking at an increase when it comes to our CSU and UC system. 5% increase over the next 5 years, each year, 25%, which is absolutely important to making sure that we are able to hold down tuition at both the UC and CSUs. Can we talk about climate for a moment? Is that all right with everybody? So look, I'm going to share some frustration. The previous administration in Washington, D.C. always talked about how climate change is a hoax. And what really infuriates me about that is that we all are the canaries in the coal mine with these horrendous fires with climate change. And last year, California passed a nation-leading climate budget, $51 billion in climate smart programs throughout the state of California that will be invested over the next 5 years. And I'd like to talk with you about what this $51 billion will mean to be able to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions as well as combat climate change. Is that all right? So here's what we know. Through this investment of $51 billion, it's going to cut greenhouse gas emissions by 85% by 2045 here in the state of California. It's going to cut air pollution in that same time period by 60%. We have now banned the sale of combustible engine, gas-powered vehicles by 2035. We are going to reduce oil consumption by 2045 by 91%. here in the state of California. We're investing 1.5 billion over the next 5 years for electrified school buses. We're going to put in $10 billion for subsidies for low-income Californians to be able to purchase new or use electrified vehicles. We're going to be able to complete the electric vehicle highway connecting every corner of this state to ensure that there is no range anxiety for EVs. Whether you live in Guerneville or up in Crescent City, you will always have an alternative to fossil fuels. And that is just so important. And the last piece, I'll just say, we're going to invest about $15 billion to expand public transit in counties, whether you are urban, suburban, or rural here in California. It is absolutely important to the future of this nation. And let's just be honest, for the future of the country, that we continue to invest in this climate crisis. Speaking of the climate crisis, can we talk a little bit about wildfires? It has been absolutely devastating on what we've seen since 2015. That's when the Valley Fire took place in Lake County. And we've seen the Tubbs Fire, Walbridge. I mean, there's too many to count at this point. And what we've realized is that CAL FIRE has a firefighter shortage. Over the last 5 years, we have seen 46,000 calls from firefighters across the state to mental health hotlines. It's simply unacceptable. Last year, suicide outpaced on-the-job deaths for firefighters in the United States of America. Suicide. We have to fix the CAL FIRE shortage. 2 reasons. Number one, for the health and safety of the women and men that do the job each and every year. And then number two, to be able to keep our communities safe. So in the last 8 years, we've gone from 6,700 CAL FIRE firefighters. This year, we have 11,300 firefighters on the ground fighting fires in this state each and every day. We're going to expand the ranks once again over the next 36 months by another 1,000 full-time firefighters. That will take us to about 12,500 seasonal and full-time firefighters within CAL FIRE. We're investing millions of dollars to be able to expand equipment at local fire districts, as well as expand fire stations at local fire districts, non-CAL FIRE related. 300,000 acres of forest land in the state has been made more fire resilient. We struck finally a deal with the Biden administration. They are going to invest $500 million in 7 forests to be able to make them more fire resilient. And the reason why that is so important, 57% of all forest land here in the state of California owned or managed by the federal government. And it's about damn time that they start investing to be able to assist states like California. Am I right? This is not going to get solved by simply bringing your rakes. So here's the other piece. The Golden State, we've also invested in expanding our firefighting aerial resources. We have purchased 7 used C-130 cargo planes from the Coast Guard. Those cargo planes will be fully, hell yes, and I don't mean to swear, but it is really good news. So those C-130 cargo planes will be fully operational by the end of 2024, 2025, strategically located throughout the state. 5 will be on daily operation use. 2 will be used for backup in case we have a mechanic failure. We've replaced all of our old Black Hawk Vietnam era helicopters with night fighting Black Hawk helicopters now that are able to carry 10 crew and 1,300 gallons of water. We are now putting dip tanks in higher elevations throughout Sonoma County. So rather than having to hunt for a pond or figure out where the river is at, they literally just drop their bucket into a large dip tank up the Mayakama or in the coastal mountains to be able to have immediate resource when it comes to water. In the last piece, I'll just say, billions of dollars is being invested to be able to make our communities more wildfire safe. And we'd love to be able to work with you. And we have been working with Supervisor Hopkins on that. And I just want to say thank you, Supervisor, for your leadership on this. Can we talk about PG&E? And I'm going to duck while you throw your chair. So look, I don't trust their CEO. I don't trust their board, their management. I have great respect for the women and men that keep our lights on each and every day. And being out in the river in West County, we have seen the challenges with PG&E. They have put profits in front of people for decades. And that is why we are in the mess that we are in with this utility. PG&E is the largest utility in the United States of America. And I'm going to be very candid, they have been one of, if not the most dysfunctional in the nation as well. And the state of California is finally holding them accountable. So I'd like to talk about undergrounding of fire lines, if that's okay with you, of electric lines. So we've been waiting for PG&E to move on their own to bury their most high fire threat electric lines. And if we were going to continue to wait, it would be another 40 to 50 years for them to actually move. So for the first time in this state's history, we are now forcing PG&E to be able to bury 10,000 miles of their most high fire threat electric lines here in the state of California. And here's what we know about that. 99% of fire starts are stopped before they even happen because they're underground. 99%. It's also cheaper for the ratepayer to continue with the hardening of the line, to be able to do the switches on the line, to continue with what they are now discontinued is their vegetation management. It would cost us over the next 10 years, $30 more per month per ratepayer. To underground these 10,000 miles of most high fire threat lines, it's going to cost us $16.30 per month. It is still a steep cost, but it cuts in half what we'd all be responsible for, and it stops wildfires before they start. And I'm just going to be honest, I don't think that we can trust PG&E to be able to do the work that they're supposed to do to be able to keep our community safe, because they continue to put profit in front of all of us, the people in their service territory. And it's about time, and would love to be able to hear from you about PG&E. Can we talk homelessness for a moment? And I'm going to wrap up here in just a moment, I promise. It's appalling and it's unacceptable. And you deserve better. Those who call the streets home, 146,000 in the state of California, deserve better every night as well. And I want to look to Supervisor Hopkins and her leadership. You know, there are a lot of counties where we have seen double-digit increases in the homeless population. Sonoma County, thanks to the partnership with the county Board of Supervisors, Supervisor Hopkins, and the state, Sonoma County has decreased the homeless population by 22% year over year, 22%. Now, here's where the partnership is advancing. 150 million has come in from the state of California since 2020. We are investing in data-driven approaches and getting folks into permanent housing wrapped with 24-hour addiction and mental health services, just like what we see happening with George's Hideaway. I promise you, you're going to continue to see additional funds and accountability measures, and we need to look to where Sonoma County has been, again, 22% decrease year over year in the homeless population, where we're seeing most urban and suburban counties seeing at least a 10 to 15% increase. And it is because they're taking a data-driven approach and focusing on expansion of services along with housing. And I want to be really open about what you can expect next. And this is going to be controversial, but I want to make sure that we're fully transparent. So first and foremost, we have introduced Care Court. Care Court will be a homeless court specializing on individuals, residents who have addiction, psychosis, mental health challenges, or both. We've expanded the law to allow for Superior Court judges to be able to advance conservatorship on individuals who may not be able to care for themselves. Why this is important? We firmly believe out of the 146,000, we're probably going to be able to house about 60%. We still believe between 30 and 40% will not want to seek permanent housing or services. And what we know, those folks deserve better, and the community deserves better. So the second piece, and again, this is going to be controversial, we're advancing legislation today, and will be passed in the next 3 weeks to change the definition of gravely disabled. Right now, if you are gravely disabled with a physical disability, they can advance and compel an individual to care. Mental health, as well as addiction, isn't in that definition. So we need to close that loop to ensure that we're getting folks the care that they need. And then we need to continue to build housing. So after a 24-month potential conservatorship, there's housing wrapped with 24-hour addiction, as well as mental health services on the other end. Anyone that's going to come in front of you to tell you that this is a quick fix, It's not telling you the truth. And I'm a firm believer of I want to hear the challenging news as well as the good news. The challenging news, we got some time before we're going to be able to solve this crisis. But I can be really honest with you. We're working morning, noon, and night to be able to expand services, expand housing, and tackle this incredible challenge and making sure that it's good for the human who's also on the street. Monorail bridge. And again, if you'd like to throw your chair, those that didn't throw it during PG&E, here it comes. So I want to take a moment to say thank you to the supervisor for her amazing advocacy on the monorail bridge. And I also want to say, incredibly disappointed, frustrated, and angry is an understatement about where the supervisor is at. And I don't want to put words in her mouth. And I've heard some other words, but we won't repeat them here tonight. Look, the bridge is so critical, obviously, to Monorail and to the river at large. And what I want to let you know is we are working and we are in lockstep to be able to find a solution to the funding challenge. Total price tag is about 90 million. The state is willing to invest about 25 million. We have a hard and fast rule that if rehab comes under the cost of a full replacement, we have to go with rehab. But here's my piece. We got to get this fixed. And we got to look at a permanent new span. And so we are attached at the hip to be able to look under every rock for additional funding. And I'm not trying to be squishy with you tonight. It's going to take some time, but I promise you we're working with Supervisor Hopkins in the lead. And I just want to say thank you to the supervisor for her amazing advocacy. And I also know how incredibly frustrated she is. And again, that is an understatement. Can we talk about the ADA improvement project in downtown Guerneville? Is that all right? Some good news. Again, love working with Supervisor Hopkins. We work on a lot together. This has been a long time coming. And if you already talked about the supervisor, please throw a book at my head. Look, we're looking at breaking ground in 2024. Upgraded sidewalks, bulb outs, new lighting, landscaping. This is a partnership about $5.6 million that will be invested in downtown Guerneville for new sidewalks and a lot of other improvements. It is going to be some short-term pain for long-term gain, and about $5 million is coming from the state. The final allotment of funding is going to come in October. Once that's in the bank, we kick off this project in 2024. Again, there will be some meetings leading up to that, and the county has invested about $660,000 into this to be able to do new ornamental lighting, working with the chamber, obviously, and residents, new tree wells. I mean, this is going to be spectacular. And I just want to say thank you, Supervisor, for your work on that. A lot more communication to come. I'm going to wrap it right here on the issue of broadband, and then finally a woman's right to choose. Broadband, $6 billion being invested by the state to be able to launch America's largest high-speed internet project. The West County, the river, is at the top of the list, along with the coast. I want to say thank you to Mike Nichols, who is here tonight. He has been the absolute champion to be able to expand broadband, whether it's the coast or underserved areas. And I just want to say thank you, Mike, for your incredible work. And then finally, would like to talk about protecting a woman's right to choose. And I know in some circles this could be controversial, but I just want to share with you about where I'm at. We put up a constitutional amendment here last year, overwhelmingly ratified by California voters, that will forever enshrine a woman's right to reproductive health care, access to contraception, and access to abortion services. It passed overwhelmingly by about 75% of the vote. We've also invested about $100 million to be able to expand reproductive health care clinics across this state that will serve women in California and women throughout America. We have also We've also changed the law because what we started to see is Mississippi, Texas, Florida, if they were using government healthcare, they were tracking addresses to potentially go after women who travel to be able to have abortions or looking at reproductive health care. It is now illegal to be able to share that information with other states if they have that procedure here in California to be able to protect them and their long-term needs. And we will always stand strong for women here in California. I have talked way too long. I'm going to turn it over to the chairs and invite the supervisor to come on back up, and look forward to having the conversation. I'm sorry that I went on so damn long. So thank you again for having me. I look forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Senator. All right, we're gonna go to the council for any questions you may have for either Supervisor Hopkins or the senator, and then we'll go to the public. So let's open it up to the council with questions first.
Yes.
On care court issue. I'm just trying to get clarification. So as I understand it, the way it has worked in the past, is if this is a voluntary, so someone says, yes, I will go to the care court. So will that process change? Will you always have to go get a gravely disabled, permission in order to be involved in the
It will no longer be voluntary. And I fully anticipate the state will face litigation on this. We have some of the loosest conservatorship laws in the nation. I'm all for personal freedoms. And let's just be honest, we're at a crisis point in California. And we have to be able to care for those who are out on the street and respond to the concerns of residents. So care court is rolling out in the first 7 counties this year. LA, San Francisco, San Jose, Sacramento, mostly urban, where the per capita challenge with homelessness is the greatest. There is a set of circumstances and triggers that an individual would face up to a 2-year conservatorship in a small group home. It will be very similar to what we saw with the closure of Sonoma Developmental Center. You are no longer going to see large institutions, but single family homes with 8 to 10 individuals wrapped with 24/7 mental health care as well as addiction services. The other reason why we've only rolled it out to 7 counties is because we have such a housing crisis. There is also a promise for aftercare housing. And I am a big believer of under promise, over deliver. And where I am concerned is that the state has at times overcommitted and has not delivered to its full potential. So that's why you're seeing a phased rollout. Sonoma County is in the next round. We have to ramp up financial resources for superior courts, as well as secure permanent housing. The housing will be run by nonprofits, and again, with 24/7 addiction and mental health services. I'll turn it over to you, ma'am, for last word.
I just want to make sure that, so if there is this care court. Oh, sorry.
Do you want to come up here? And yeah, please.
No, go ahead.
So if we have this care court environment, who initially is making the decisions about who goes through care court? It's through the DA's office, so someone gets arrested and then they go through the DA? Or is there some plan to have more people involved in terms of mental health, counselors, doctors, things like that?
It's a great question. There will be several entry points to this. And again, it's not, it won't be on the first offense. I just want to be very clear with you. There has to be a track record. And it could come from DA. It can come from psych evaluation from county mental health. It could come from a hospital or a federally qualified health center. It could be from the police department. I can keep going down the line. And what I'd be happy to do is provide some specifics about what this is looking like in the rollout. And the other piece is we're bringing all 7 counties that are within our Senate district, Golden Gate Bridge up to the Oregon border together. We're bringing out the head of the care court system for the state, also the head from the Department of Health Services, to meet with the sheriff's office, each of the chairs of the board of supervisors, the county administrator, head of human services, the presiding judge who runs the courts for each county, and the chief executive officer for each of the courts to be able to start having conversation about this. And we would be happy if you would want this we could work with Supervisor Hopkins to be able to have a special dual MAC meeting on this specific issue in 2024. If you'd like that, we'd be more than willing to be able to bring that out, to be able to talk about what that looks like. Perfect.
Scott.
Wait 1 second, because I can just switch the audio so that, okay, all right, yeah.
Oh, there we go.
That should be on, is it? No.
Testing.
No.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Testing.
Why don't you come up here?
All right. Well, I'll speak loud and Zoom can hear me. State parks. I'm Scott Farmer, Coast MAC rep, Timber Cove. I'm reading so I can be succinct. State parks is nearly half of our physical area in Timber Cove. In 2008, funding was cut for state parks and Salt Point Fort Ross lost its 6 resident rangers. This impacted the emergency response complement, placing the burden fully upon our volunteers. Still, funding has not been restored and Salt Point Fort Ross has been left short. Only recently, 1 resident ranger has been stationed here. From north to south, Fisk Mill Cove forest is dead and dying. 4 April fires have started there in recent memory. The parking lot is closed. The public toilet is locked. The Cruise Rhododendron Reserve toilets have been nailed shut. Reef Campground has been closed for years also. We were told that a permit to replace a culvert was the issue. We were told this nearly 2 years ago. Still nothing is happening. Nothing has changed. During the local coastal plan deliberations, coastal access was held as paramount. It's the law. State Parks is failing at Salt Point Fort Ross. Please fund state parks so resource triage is not performed. Restore public access, fund the state parks accordingly. Thank you.
So again, I'm a big believer of following through with promises. So I'd like to talk about how I'd like to follow up on Salt Point Fort Ross. So I want to get clear. So you're saying because of the challenges with the culvert, that's why you're seeing ongoing closure. Is that correct? Do you want to go to the microphone just so they can hear? I'm sorry. So we don't, I apologize.
The culvert issue is only regarding Reef Campground. Reef Campground's associated with the fort, and the fort is being managed by the Conservancy.
Yes.
But they can't manage the campground until the state parks replace the culvert. That's closed.
So
that's one issue.
Yeah, no, totally.
Yeah.
So I think the overall issue, and please push back on me, is the ongoing funding for state parks. And look, I will share my frustration. So number one, state parks is the jewel of the North Coast. It's the most robust system in the entire United States. It's also an economic driver for our rural communities, where you live on the river or you live out on the coast. And we have shortchanged state parks for decades. We have over $1 billion in deferred maintenance across each of the parks, and it's getting worse. We have invested an additional $40 million every year now into state parks. That's now we're in our 3rd year of additional $40 million every year going into state parks for deferred maintenance. But let me just be honest, that's a drop in the bucket, and it's going to take us a long time to be able to get to this $1 billion backlog if it's just $40 billion. We need to ensure that they have robust funding in each of the state park districts. A couple of things. I'd love, if it's okay with you, for Hannah Apple to be able to give you a card. I will follow up with the superintendent, start talking about the campground and the culvert. And I also hear you in regards to, out of the total 8 rangers, only one's been replaced. There's still 7 short, and it's impacted emergency response on the coast.
6, yeah, not 8.
Oh, 6. I'm
6
sorry.
originally.
6 originally. I apologize. Okay. You have my word that I'll follow up with the superintendent. We'll look into the culvert issue. And then also on the issue of rangers.
Yeah.
I think we can get the culvert issue solved relatively quickly. On the ranger issue, I just need to look into it and the financial obligation from the district.
And the other 2 were Fistmill Cove closed because of I think they don't let people in because the trees are falling down because they're dead. And but that's an important restroom for travelers. It's a big mushrooming area, and people park on the highway instead of in the parking lot. And you can guess what they do without the toilet being around.
100%. I will definitely follow up, and it's also extreme fire danger, as you said, as well.
Absolutely.
And we've been funding one-time funds for wildfire mitigation, about 70 million a year for state parks, as well as Cover Department Fish and Wildlife lands. A lot of the money has gone to Sonoma Valley, where we've seen like around Annandale and the urban interface. Let me check in on that if that's okay with you. I'm not trying to be squishy and not give you direct answers tonight, and I apologize, but you will get a follow-up and we'll start moving on this. Hannah, if you don't mind, I just given a card, and look forward to talking more about this. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, thank you very much.
Council, Mike.
Welcome back to Sonoma County, Senator McGuire. It's great to have you back. I'd like to talk a little bit about PG&E, if you don't mind. I live out in Cazadero, and we're on Monterrey Circuit number 2. EPSS, or Fast Trip, has created over 12 outages out in our area. And part of the problem is that, they don't have insulated conductors or tree wire out there. So if a squirrel or a branch hits the wires, everything goes down. And what that creates is a situation where it takes 4 hours for power restoration. Crews have to be dispatched from Santa Rosa. Same thing has happened out in Occidental. There's another way of perhaps looking at this. There's let's see right here. There's a ground level primary electric distribution system that's being used in Asia and also other parts of the United States, where they actually remove the power poles and place the power lines in conduit on the ground along the county right of way. PG&E is exploring this, and it's something that certainly should be looked at for our rural areas where we have definite problems, especially in tier 3 high fire threat areas. So I think that concludes my comments, but we have a lot to look at as far as power issues out here in Western Sonoma County for sure, Mike, or Senator, sorry. Okay.
One thing that I wanted to mention is that we do plan on hosting a town hall with PG&E coming up. And I actually want to thank Senator McGuire. His staff attended a recent meeting that our team held with PG&E, including sort of leadership as well as our government affairs liaison. And also Congressman Huffman had an attendant present at that meeting as well. And so we are in particular concerned about the fast trip technology. It's fantastic to stop, wildfires from starting. Don't get me wrong. But when you see repeated outages with often very little information and often a lengthy time to get that sort of, brought back to power. I mean, we ask questions like, why aren't they putting little cheap cameras on the line so that they can actually identify what hit the line and, confirm that it wasn't, that it bounced off and that it's no longer posing a threat. And I think that the question about conduit is also a very interesting one, but hopefully we can get more answers directly from PG&E leadership at that upcoming town hall. And I know that Senator McGuire will have a staff member present at that because he watches this issue very closely throughout his district.
Yeah, 100%. And so Mike took notes when you were talking. I promise you, we're going to keep on this, and anything that we can do to be able to tag team and assist the supervisor who has, we literally were just talking about this yesterday about the challenges. We are all in, and anything we can do to be able to also, just being honest, bring enhanced undergrounding here to the coast as well as the river is going to be really important as well. More to come on this.
Larry County got 23 miles of undergrounding. Sonoma County got 2 miles of underground.
Yeah, out in the Sonoma Valley. So absolutely. In Lake County, it got more than Sonoma County as well. I mean, it's something that we are tracking very closely. Yes. More to come on this, Mike, I promise you. I'll give my best, Andy.
Yeah, speak loudly. Should we follow up on that? What are you looking into with respect to insulation rather than undergrounding? Because we talked, I talked to in Monterey or Bill Grant, don't see undergrounding as ever really these problems, but that insulation would be a better approach.
Absolutely. So I think on the issue insulation, it will be deployed quicker and it is going to be cheaper. So I think that is going to be where, besides the initial 10,000 miles, the most high fire threat lines, as identified through these CAL FIRE maps, that is going to be the step that PG&E is going to be taking. If there are specific areas that you'd like us to be able to look into, I would be grateful to be able to get them from you, and then we could follow up with PG&E and then follow up with you. If it's all right, I'm going to have Hannah bring up a card, and then if you can just give us the specifics. You said within Monterey, correct?
And
Villa Grande and Monterey. Yeah.
Among all of
Mm-hmm. Okay. We will follow up on that. And again, I hope I'm not coming off as being coy with you and not addressing directly. Just want to make sure that we're able to touch base on Monterey and Villa Grande, and we will follow with PG&E. And obviously this will be tag teaming with Supervisor Hopkins on this. Thank you for that. Okay.
Well, you know, the subject of fire came up, so I definitely had to talk about it. Our rural volunteer fire departments are graying. It's very hard because of the barriers and the requirements for working class folks to volunteer. So, you know, first part of that question is there any hope to alleviate some of those requirements? The second part being pointing out that the state of Idaho, which I realize is a very different state than California, all they require is wildland firefighter certifications. Because of Fire Forward, we have, and this was last year, 600 certified wildland firefighters in our community, including our wonderful Hopkins over there, that can be called on to volunteer. They have the tools, they have the NOMEX. Is there any hope for opening the door for more volunteers and making that process less arduous?
I think it's going to be a challenge to be able to reduce standards. I'm just going to be really honest about it. Where I think the state can assist is on enhance, and I'm not trying to evade the subject, but I just want to be honest. I just don't see that we would reduce training standards. There may be some exceptions, but I just think it would be a hurdle to be able to do here in California. I'm not familiar with Idaho. I'd like to be able to become more, no, I really would. I'd like to be able to become more familiar, if you wouldn't mind sending that on to me, but I think that may be a bit of an uphill. I'd like to make this case. If you know of, for example, equipment needs, whether it's out on the coast or here on the river or West County, we'd love to be able to know about it. You know, we just invested $1 million with Sonoma County Fire District to be able to purchase 2 new Type 3 engines. We're purchasing 10 new Type 6 engines in Southern Humboldt, Northern Mendocino. And then also with the upcoming tax measure, I know both Sea Ranch as well as West County departments would also get additional funding for additional full-time staff. So happy to take a look at Idaho and just circling back to that and see what they do. And I'm sorry that I just gave you an answer you probably did not want to hear. So I'll give it over to the supervisor.
You know, I just wanted to add, because, you know, we went through that training at the same time. We have kids the same age. I'm also thinking of, you know, Shepley, who also has, you know, kids, Jackie Jorgensen, who's done so much with, you know, volunteer. I feel like, how do we, if we have to meet those requirements, how do we make it more accessible and maybe even fun? I mean, you're a person who can turn anything into a party, right? And so, you know, is there an opportunity to use some of the funding if and when the fire sales tax moves forward next year, which just so everyone knows, that will be on the March ballot, and it would generate millions of dollars, really actually prioritizing benefits to rural fire districts, which is where we have the biggest gap in terms of services. You know, but if we were able to say, take Goldridge, which really does believe strongly in maintaining that volunteer fire base, and try to, you know, have events with childcare and food, right? Where you can do your pack test and you can get those certifications. I know that Marshall led a team, right, from Fire Forward. Was that in 2019 or 2020?
2019, but because they didn't have the medical training, they can no longer volunteer.
So see, this is how, you know, what's the minimum level of medical training? How can we make it more accessible, and how can we make it free, right? Because that's the other thing is like, so you're going to ask me to pay a bunch of money and then get a babysitter, right, to go take this training so that I can then risk my life in the event of a fire, which we all want to actually do because we all actually want to protect everyone's life and property. But I think that maybe there are opportunities for creative local solutions. And it's certainly something that we could also consider, you know, sponsoring events from our tourism impact fund in the 5th district or community investment fund. So I would say we should grab lunch with Shepley whenever he gets back from the Humboldt fire, which I think is where he's at right now, you know, and Jackie, and kind of put our brains together and see what we could do to encourage participation, particularly of, I think, like young, busy people, because we have amazing volunteers, you know, who are getting of an age where volunteering becomes more challenging for these kinds of physical tasks. And I kind of feel like it's incumbent on our generation, even though we're busy and crazy, you know, to try to step up and meet that gap. So let's talk afterwards. That's my request.
Thank you.
Any other, I have a question. It wasn't brought up before, but I know, and lately I've heard it a lot about insurance cancellations out here. Ours was canceled, our homeowners insurance was canceled. We were lucky enough to find another provider. It took a very long time, and then the alternative was the state part with the with you know, private insurance combining. It's astronomically expensive. What can the state do about that, so there's not so many cancellations, especially out here where we've been through fires, we know they exist, but our houses didn't burn down yet. And hopefully they never will. It just seems their risk assessment is even a little wackadoodle-doo, as well as the practical things that happen when your homeowner's insurance gets canceled.
Can I just add an example?
Yeah, yeah.
Can I just add a personal example to this as well? My name's Dan Sampson. I'm a resident and owner in Guerneville for 5 years. I live over in the Dubrava Village Homeowners Association, which is a quaint little village over in Gernwood Park. We have 55 townhomes, and in the past several years, our annual premium for these townhomes, which range from 600 square feet to 1,200 square feet, has been about $30,000 for the entire complex. I'm on the board there, and this year we had our policies renewing in September. We had a quote of $500,000, and the insurer just came back to us and said they're not going to do that. Now we're getting a quote of $1.5 million, which is $30,000 per homeowner. Now, in our association, it is largely 55 year old and over. And so this is really a crisis. And I just wanted to add an example to this. I appreciate all that you're doing with our surpluses, and I really do believe that investing in education is critical as well. But we're going to have a a situation where people can't live in California. So the schools are important, but people are going to be leaving because they can't afford their homeowners insurance. So whatever you can do from a state perspective to take a look at that, it would be appreciated. Thank you.
Hey, before you respond to that, Senator, I have another example for you as well. My name is Cleve Jones. I lived here before. I lived here in the 90s in Villa Grande. And now I bought my house up here about 5 years ago. When I bought my house in Villa Grande, the first thing I did was look at the FEMA maps. I'm well aware of what happens on this river. And the FEMA map said that my property there was low risk. The lender that gave me my mortgage apparently agreed because they didn't require me to get flood insurance. I chose to get it anyway, just to have that little bit of peace of mind, and it was affordable. When I looked at my property up here, I again went to the FEMA map, saw it was low risk. I talked to my neighbor, Richard Evangelisti, who's lived in the neighborhood since 100 years ago. And he said this place never floods. It didn't flood in '86. It's never flooded as long as there's records of it. So I went ahead and I got flood insurance anyway for peace of mind. And you never know what could happen with a creek and the rest of it. And I believe in climate change. I filed a change of address with my insurer, which they apparently didn't process. They acknowledged their mistake. By the time it was fixed, it was 32 days past. So I was 2 days beyond the grace period. So they declined to renew my flood insurance at the premium that it had been, which was $645 a year. The new quote was $6,250 a year. I went to other insurance companies. They all came in at about the same amount. But the oddest thing is that they gave me a link to something called Risk Factor, which is operated by something called the First Street Foundation. And when I looked into that, it appears that this is now the organization which seems to be banks, finance companies, and real estate companies who are now going to determine what our risk assessment is, and hence what our premiums are going to be. What can you do with your colleagues in the congressional delegation to protect us from this? Because it's not just Sonoma County or California, it appears to be the entire country. Thank you. And thanks for coming. And come back for Pride on October 15th.
Yes. Yeah. Would love to, please, love to come back on the 15th. That would be fantastic. Thank you. So a few things, if it's all right, just kind of going through some of the issues where I think you're going to see reform being advanced. So I want to be really blunt about this. You're going to see two different proposals. One that will be, we have 3 weeks left of the legislative session, and I firmly believe that you're going to see the largest insurance corporations on the planet advancing a proposal that will raise your rates considerably and then spread the risk to consumers. So right now, and you're absolutely right, especially for HOAs, multi-units, it has been incredibly challenging in this state to be able to keep your policy because there have been record non-renewals since 2015, especially for multi-unit structures in high fire risk or fire risk zones. I want to talk about where I think we need to be able to go, and then also talk to you about Florida. So Florida has a governor and a legislature that has given insurance everything they want. Highest residential rates in America for homeowners insurance. Reinsurance, meaning that insurance companies go sell the risk backed by large financial institutions. And then you pay more for that reinsurance. And then 3, that when there is a catastrophic hurricane, they have something very similar to the FAIR plan. Right now, the insurance company has to pay everything. It doesn't go to the consumer. So if there's a large fire, $20 billion worth of losses in a fire season, it stays with the insurance company. They now pass that on to consumers in Florida. I bring all that up is because Florida has laid down a red carpet for insurance, and they're still leaving. 15 large insurance corporations have left Florida since 2018. This is also after they had a home hardening commission develop standards that if you adopt those wind standards, right? Because they have hurricanes. We don't. Well, we actually did. That they have to write. So here's where California is going to go, where I think we need to move. Number one, so that you don't have these large multinational corporations deciding how much you're going to pay, we need public catastrophic modeling. So catastrophic modeling means you see where the highest risk is, number one, and you may have to pay a bit more if you live in a high risk zone, but it's not going to be $1 million a year, right? Going under the FAIR Plan plus a rider from Lloyd's of London, for example. Right now, insurance companies get to decide everything. They don't have to tell you what the risk really is. They have their own private modeling. So number one, we need a public catastrophic model here in California that we all know how risk is determined. Two, we need to develop our own home hardening commission made up of fire chiefs, building officials, fire marshals that develop new home hardening standards here in California. If you have a community home hardening standard adopted, then insurance has to write. We had that bill back in 2016 and we were slaughtered. We died an ugly death in the assembly insurance. They spent $300,000 to be able to defeat the bill. Three, California has the most lucrative auto insurance market, not just in the nation, but in North America. We're advancing legislation next year. If you want to write auto, you have to provide residential. So it's simple, right? You can't come in, take all the goodies, and then when you think that there may be some risk, you annihilate entire communities of insurance. So what you're going to see for reforms, a public catastrophic model that will be advanced, so we all know where the challenges are. There will most likely be, just being really upfront about it, a risk-based pricing model that will be cheaper than what it would be to go on the FAIR Plan plus getting a rider, right, from some international insurance company. Two, you're going to see home hardening standards. Again, you're going to see a bill that will be advanced. If you adopt a community-wide hardening standard, insurance companies have to write. They're not going to write if a home on one street is hardened, another home on another street is not. It just doesn't work. There's not consistency, but that's why we need to adopt these community-wide hardening standards. And three, here's the hook. You can't write auto unless you write residential. So you're going to see reforms advanced on this. I think that you're going to see two different packages move. You're going to see an industry-driven, industry-friendly package try to be slammed through in the next 3 weeks. I firmly believe that we can defeat it. And then you're going to see a consumer-driven package that will be advanced in January. Time is of the essence, right? And a person's home in the state is their number one nest egg as well. And so would love to work with you on this. And I'd be happy, maybe the same day we could do a dual meeting on care court half, and then also talk about what reforms are coming from insurance. We'd love to be able to talk with you on that, because I really do think that you're going to see a big fight. If we can't get it through the legislature, we're going to take it to the voters. Voters passed Prop 103 that capped auto insurance rates at 6.9%. You can't exceed that on an annual basis. We have the lowest automobile insurance rates in the United States of America here in California, lowest, because Prop 103 put a cap on it. I think that we may have to end up, I know this is not a good answer because it's going to be some work. We may actually have to take it to the voters as well if we can't get this passed this year. I promise you, we're going to work on this relief. It is of utmost concern. It is impacting our local economy. It's impacting resale, and it's impacting the livelihoods of tens of thousands in Northern California. I would love to work with you on it. Please. Thank you.
I know we have a couple more council members that I can't see the Zoom, but I hear they have their hands raised. So Marty, did you have something?
No.
Oh, okay. Ginny.
Yes. Yes, good evening. This is a question for Senator McGuire. Senator McGuire, I have two state park questions, one pertaining to Willow Creek Campground. that had been closed for many years, and I wonder what the plan is for when it will reopen. It's a lovely, beautiful place, and it really ought to be open, and many of our visitors would love to camp there. My second question is the Salmon Creek Ranger Station is a beautiful spot right on Salmon Creek, and it could be a future place to have a great parking lot so that people who are visiting the coast from Salmon Creek up through Gleason Beach would have more parking. And I wonder if state parks might be able to create a plan to improve parking and make access to the beach safer. Currently, many people park willy-nilly alongside the cliffs, which of course are very fragile, right adjacent to Route 1 in a very curvy, windy section. So thank you very much for hearing my question, and I look forward to working with the state parks or whatever representative can offer in terms of a resource to plan for better parking and beach access for state parks. Thank you.
Jenny, thank you so much and grateful for your service. And a board member, we will look into the Willow Creek campground situation, and I apologize, I can't comment on it directly tonight. I just need to get additional. I will get additional information. We are going to keep the superintendent busy. And then on the Salmon Creek Ranger Station and parking, I just need to look into that as well. And Jenny, what is the best way? I guess we could follow up with the chairs on getting back in contact with you.
Yeah, through our chair, Brian, and or directly. Yeah, because we have lots of visitors to the coast, as you can imagine. And there's just not enough place for people to park. And the cliffs are fragile and it's scary.
100%. I will follow up, and I'm not trying to look down and not look directly at you. I'm just taking notes. Thus far for our follow-up, we have Care Court meeting 2024. We'd like to try to tag team that with a meeting on insurance. Again, we'll figure out how that works, working with Supervisor Hopkins and each of the MACs. On state parks, we have follow-up on the Reef Campground Culvert, the Fisk Mill bathroom, right? Yep, the whole thing. Yeah. Oh, in the rhododendron reserve. Thank you. For Ginny, we have the Willow Creek campground, and then the Salmon Creek Ranger Station for parking. We are going to look at Cazadero, Monterey, Villa Grande on the insulation. We're going to send on all issues of Idaho, if that's all right. Just I do want to see it, if that's okay. And then I think that's our list so far, and look forward to hearing more. Ginny, thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator McGuire. Thank you for visiting with us.
All right, any more council questions or comments? We do need to go to public. I see no hands back there. Am I missing someone? Okay, so let's go to public comments, and Lisa can go first. Hi, Lisa.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Great. So I have two comments and a thank you. Two comments are, the first one's about AB 2449, and the second one is about broadband equity and PG&E for the senator. So for AB 2449, and I'm Lisa Nomanson, I'm a Forestville rep on the LRRMAC, but I have used up my 2 just cause appearances. So I wanted to know if anything was being done to be able to enhance people who are on Brown Act councils and can't appear more than twice. That was one question. Second question is, Scott Farmer and I attended a meeting about broadband equity a few months ago, where there's going to be a ton of money put into middle mile infrastructure. in the next, decades. And I just wanted, this is more of a comment. It'd be ironic if we're working toward undergrounding PG&E, which we should, and at the same time, there's a lot of infrastructure being put onto existing PG&E infrastructure for broadband equity. So if we could maybe, I don't know how to, with all deliberate speed, make everything work, but, dig once and possibly coordinate PG&E and broadband money. I mean, it's slightly rhetorical at this point, but just wanted to keep that concept alive. Mike Nichols always talks about that. Scott always talks about it. So just wanted to bring that up. And then finally, a thank you for your work and support at the state level of for humans with uteruses. This is going to be an important year for that work, and I so appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the comments and the questions, and any items, Supervisor, you want to be able to jump in on this as well. On the undergrounding, you're looking at a dual dig, right? So dig only once. I will share my frustration with you. With the undergrounding bill that we passed, we originally were mandating that you had to have broadband fiber in with PG&E, and the telecommunication companies, the cable companies came unglued, and we weren't going to be able to get the bill through committee, just being really honest about it. And we had to take that out because it is the right move. And why the hell would you dig twice when you could put two different types of equipment in at once? So I hear you on that, and that really should be the priority. Can you repeat, just give me the question one more time on the Brown Act? And I apologize, I just didn't catch that one more time, if you don't mind repeating on the issue of the Brown Act.
I don't mind repeating it. I was probably not articulating properly.
No.
For just cause, you can appear twice remotely, and I've hit my 2, so I'm a member of the public for the rest of the year. And at some point there was going to be maybe some latitude there, but I'm wondering if you could figure out a way to provide latitude through the state for all of us folks who are in rural counties, and it's easier to appear via Zoom, quite frankly, than drive for miles or, drive at night, weather, etc.
No, 100%. I will definitely look into it. I'd love to be able to get your contact information if that's possible. Okay, have it. And so you're going to hear from a woman named Hannah Apple, does a fantastic work, love working with her. She's here tonight, and we'll definitely focus in on the just cause and a remote testimony, if that's all right with you.
Thank you.
Why don't we go, you're right at the podium, so go for it.
Thank you. So we are a group of residents from Grayton, and we have a few follow-up questions about the housing element. We want to know that now that the housing element plan has been implemented, what effects does that have on any started builders remedy permits? Also, we want to know what oversight will the county have on that project? And will an environmental impact report be completed? And will groundwater assessments be completed to determine if the aquifer can accommodate the new project without affecting well output for the neighboring properties? And what input will be allowed by the community in any of these new developments? Thank you.
Those are all really great questions, and I will do my best to answer them right now. But I also think that it might make sense to have actually a meeting with the community of Grayton, because I want to recognize, I mean, you all raised such salient points at the meeting. I really appreciate your participation. And like I said, we were sort of backed against a wall. There was not really too much we could do. You saw that play out in real time. But I think that we need some detailed information from Permit Sonoma staff, and potentially also to invite the applicant, to the table to have a conversation with the community and sort of express their intent. So the housing element with upzoning the property that did have the builder's remedy application, now the developer can actually choose to either go the builder's remedy route or the upzoned route. The upzoned route, as we know, would actually sort of require greater public participation and also allow for greater oversight from the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors in terms of things like site design, and of course, groundwater oversight. My understanding is that groundwater oversight will be part of either application, because there is not a municipal water service in Grayton. That will be required even for builder's remedy, and that if they are building a new well, that will be subject to our new very stringent well ordinance. If they choose to utilize an existing well, it would still have to go to actually a state agency, I believe, related to drinking water, that also has a robust kind of environmental review process. So that's kind of the short summary, but I think that for kind of the level of detail that you want, we really need to sit down with Permit Sonoma staff and go through. I mean, builder's remedy is brand new to all of us in Sonoma County. So I have never been through one of these processes before. And I think it would be really great to kind of sit down and have a follow-up. Does that work for you for kind of the detailed elements of the question? Okay, great.
10 to 15 residents that would at least.
Perfect.
They want to be about this. So how do we arrange that?
Great.
Have them show up to your office.
Great. So for the benefit of anyone who's listening online, a member of the audience did say that there were 10 to 15 Grayton residents who are interested. Send me an email. We will flag this. I've got several staff members who are here tonight. And so we will make sure that we try to set this up in the next month or two, and to get a Permit Sonoma staff member. And we can decide whether we want to do it in person or hybrid or virtual. Sometimes it's helpful to have a virtual element so that folks can just listen in, and so that it's also recorded for the future. So let's follow up directly. And if you stick around and you have time afterwards, I can give you my cell phone. We can follow up directly as well. So thanks.
Hey, good evening. Senator McGuire, I want to save you and your field rep some time in addressing Scott's questions. Scott, my name is Bill Maslak. We've gone through emails. It's nice to meet you. I was the one who brought across the finish line the Verizon cell tower at Salt Point. Right now, I work for State Parks. I've been in the Mendocino office for a long time. The sector superintendent down here left, and I asked my boss if I could experience Sonoma Coast, and I left my job down there, so up there, so I still do that. I came down here, and I'm acting as the sector superintendent for the parks, and it was eye-opening. And I want to address Fisk Mill. Every 2 weeks, I have a operations meeting with my staff, and we are at least putting chemical toilets in there in the bathrooms. And I met with the contract analyst. We're going to get that on and open it up. We're going to clear the trails, and that should be in maybe a month. Reef. Last Thursday, I went to Reef with our planning staff. I remember you could throw the chair at me. I was up in Mendocino trying to navigate reopening this. And quite honestly, I failed to see that what we should have just done is block some off so that we can open up the bathrooms. We're going to put chemical toilets in there. We're working with the Cooperating Association, Fort Ross Conservancy, to open that up. There was another one. There's several other. Jason Constant, we were building up staff in Salt Point State Park, some outstanding staff, and they're really getting to do good work there. And that should happen fairly soon. I think we have 4 rangers that are vacant, and it's very difficult to get it into get a ranger up in that area. But it's also the cadet this year, the class is cut in half. So that means that fewer people across the state. I'd like to talk more, but
we gotta move on.
Can we trade numbers and go
Yes.
for a walk on the coast and
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
bring a couple of our MAC reps and get regional parks there? And I mean, this is a breath of fresh air. I love your energy and your desire to problem solve, and I am super excited. And we would also love to, I think it's safe to say, feature you at a future MAC meeting to provide like a more formal update if that would work
Absolutely.
out. We
Yeah,
can maybe
yeah.
bring regional
And,
parks too.
Ginny, I want to work with regional county parks to see about parking in the future. There's a lot of good things that are going to happen.
I'm super excited.
We're
Let's
getting
trade
new
cell phone numbers and connect, please. Because this, I thank you so much for the update. This is fantastic.
Come on up.
Yes, hello, my name is Ingrid. I just had a follow-up question for Supervisor Hopkins for the Grayton parcel. Yeah. No? Hello? No. This one.
Put both of them up.
One is for in the room and one is for
Okay.
online, so, yeah.
That should work. Okay. I'm just would like to wait for Supervisor Hopkins.
Maybe we can go, we'll come back to you while she's doing that and we'll go to the next person just to keep it going along.
And if you have any questions online, please raise your hand to be unmuted.
Good evening. Thank you, Senator McGuire and Supervisor Hopkins and all the MAC members for providing us some time to speak this evening. I appreciate it so much. My name is Brian Grant. I'm a resident of Monterey, and I am here representing the Lower Russian River Watershed Citizens Advisory Group, also known as the CAG. As a group appointed by Supervisor Hopkins, we are engaged with efforts to develop sustainable and affordable wastewater solutions for communities in the Lower Russian River area that will improve local water quality and meet the new state and county requirements. The CAG has two primary roles. One is communicating with and advising the interagency team that's coordinating regulatory and implementation efforts, including wastewater treatment improvement pilot project for the Monterey Villa Grande area. And secondly, supporting the citizens in its understanding of how the pilot project will identify wastewater solutions in combination with the new regulations that might impact them. Sonoma Water has received and is administering a grant through the state funds, and engineering consultants have been retained to study options and work directly with the CAG to identify appropriate solutions. We look forward to bringing the creative solutions to the table and continuing on in the second phase of the funding related to developing the documents required to implement the findings. We're currently planning a late November community meeting to inform locals about the progress made to date and describe developments with respect to both the state and local county regulations. We plan to publish the meeting well in advance to look forward to sharing our progress with the community at that time. So more of an update than anything else, but thank you so much for your ongoing support. Thank you.
Ingrid.
Yes. I had a question for Supervisor Hopkins, if I may. I just had a follow-up question on the Grayton 5 property. By when does the owner have to choose between the builder's remedy and the 40 apartments rezoning, the high density?
That's an excellent question. And I don't know what the deadline is once someone goes down the builder's remedy path, or if they don't sort of produce or continue along, at what point are they removed from the process? I'll have to ask that of Permit Sonoma staff, but that's a question that I can write down now and make sure that we bring to the meeting in Grayton.
Okay, so the meeting would be soon, I'm hoping.
Yeah, we would look to schedule it within the next month or two. So yeah.
Okay.
Trust me, no permitting process, even the fast ones, will be faster than that. I can guarantee that.
Okay. Would someone in the permit department know how much time there is to choose between the two of you?
They hopefully will. Yeah. And the other thing is that if you have questions that you want answered right away, like we can write this down. And if you send us an email, or if you come up with, with your email address, we can follow up with you after the meeting to get that information. So
okay, great.
Again, this is all new to us. I wish that I sort of had more familiarity, but it's a brand new process.
Yeah, I'm learning too.
Yeah, I think we're all unfortunately learning together, but I look forward to the meeting and thanks for coming tonight to raise these concerns.
Yeah, thank you so much.
We're gonna go online. Brian has a question. Sorry about that. We're gonna try to go back and forth a little bit.
Okay.
All right. Hey, this is Brian Lubitz, and I'm the chair of the COSMAC. I wanted to follow up a little bit on the teleconference thing, which Lisa mentioned earlier. I think it's less an issue of AB 2449, which is the just cause stuff, so much as we've had a lot of success. Am I talking? Can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. We've had a lot of success prior to this year about with using Zoom because when you drive from one end to the other, I mean it's a really large district, and especially in the winter when we prefer for our folks not to be driving an hour and a half, 2 hours after dark to get to Bodega Bay or to get to Sea Ranch. So I believe there was a bill in the assembly, I think like AB 411 or something, 411, that would allow advisory commissions to be able to have Zoom meetings, which would be fantastic. So I just want put that back out there. I believe part of it was for LA neighborhood councils, but the other thing is in Bodega Bay and the rest of the coast, we have issues of climate resiliency that are sort of very pressing, including, for example, Bodega Bay, we have much of our most affordable housing is in areas that are going to be facing, tides coming over the area, especially with Bay Flat is in risk of flooding, and if we have another few more feet of sea level rise. So I just wanted to put that out there that, I know I've spoken to Supervisor Hopkins about, what we do when that road is flooded. But I think that's sort of a pressing issue for a lot of our communities out on the coast, how we adapt to climate change and how we're going to afford to pay for a lot of that.
You got anyone? Go ahead.
So Chair, thank you for that on the remote participation, and then also on the issue of sea level rise. We just restored about $500 million worth of potential cuts that the governor was going to advance this year on managed retreat, sea level rise planning. We would love to be able to work with you. The vast majority of that has landed in the Coastal Conservancy General Fund, which we've been very successful working with the county on to be able to secure dollars. If you have some specific projects, we'd love to be able to work with the supervisor and yourself on identifying those and how we can get applications in, because that 500 million cycle will start this fall into first quarter of 2024. So we'd love to work with you.
Thank you.
I can go now?
Yes,
Oh, goody.
yes.
Good evening, Senator McGuire. My name is Kyla Brook, and I live in Villa Grande, and I'm following up some with Brian. I'm also part of the Citizens Advisory Group for Wastewater Solutions, and I'm wondering about the possibility, since we are disadvantaged communities designated that way, at least in part, for funding for septic to sewer and how we would qualify. It's my understanding that as we discover, as we become designated as an impaired waterway, it's possible that we may not be able to get funding, and I just wanted to find out if that was true. One. Two, one of my favorite subjects in this area is roads. We have roads that are in very poor condition, and I'm wondering if there's anything that we can get some help with for that. And finally, a personal interest of mine, very long-term, is affordable housing. I am one of those naughty people that actually does house people. And one of the things that I've been having struggles with has been just cause evictions. And I want to talk about it specifically when I house somebody for Section 8. If I do a just cause eviction because they are not a good fit for all the reasons that you discussed with drugs, alcohol, problems with other people, violence, etc. If I do a just cause eviction with a tenant on Section 8, they cannot be rehoused with Section 8. And I would really love to see that changed, because I don't have an intention to move people on, except if there's really a problem. But often people who have a problem with how they're housed in one place won't have the same problem in another area. And I'm wondering if there's anything we can do to address that. And thank you for your time.
So just wanted to mention with respect to the funding for implementation, we did receive the funding for the planning grant for Monterey and Villa Grande, and that is the best possible thing to set us up for the implementation funds, right? So we need to kind of get through this phase. And then of course, if there's a shortfall in, that fund, that's when we reach out to the senator and say, hey, when are they going to be, re-upping that fund? But my understanding from all the conversations we've had with the regional board to date, get through this, and then their goal is to fund the implementation. And I believe that we also have received special dispensation so that in addition to funding septic to sewer, we can actually also look at funding like septic to community septic or sort of, individual homeowner improvements. In addition to that, we can also look at a Skype-like model where we actually do, sort of like property tax financing in order to actually implement some of these septic solutions. And so similar to this, the program that we've utilized primarily for solar that we now also have for home hardening in Sonoma County, we can also actually extend that for septic TMDL compliant issues. So I'm hopeful. I feel like, the best thing that we can do is have a good plan. And one thing that I did want to mention, and I know that there will be sort of some outreach on this. We do anticipate some kind of a settlement at some point with the regional board based on the flooding that occurred in 2019. Unfortunately, what happens when we flood, our sewer system in the Russian River goes underwater, and then we actually receive fines for that event from the regional board. But there's been a lot of coordination and communication with the regional board, and there is talk, nothing is final, that potentially some of that fine would actually just be reinvested in the system to do additional planning to look beyond Monterey and Villa Grande, to look at regionalization throughout Western Sonoma County. And so I think it's actually a huge opportunity, sort of out of something that's unfortunate, to then look at broader solutions, right? We're already having conversations with Occidental and Grayton. Forestville has also sometimes, expressed some interest as well. What is the regional solution? Because we have all these little tiny sewer systems and they all don't have really enough people to meet the ever increasing regulatory burden and the improvements that need to be made without sending costs absolutely skyrocketing through the roof. So how do we look at regional solutions, getting a larger sort of, ratepayer base that we can then all modernize together? So those conversations are ongoing. And as soon as there is something officially public to announce, we will be there with that information. But that's kind of just something that's under discussion right now, just so you know.
Again, that's why we love the supervisor on it. Thank you, Supervisor. And Ms. Brooke, just a couple other items on roads. We are seeing increased funding coming, whether it's Sonoma or other counties from the state. If there are specific road projects, obviously, that's something that we'd be more than willing to be able to talk with the county about. Just being honest about it, I think one of the most efficient ways to be able to fund is, since we have the ongoing state funds for highways and state property, if there are some specific state arteries that you think that we need to be able to focus on, there's going to be more money for that versus the pot that we don't touch and simply transfer from the gas tax to local communities. If there are specific bridge projects, obviously that's something that we'd be willing to take a look at as well. So we'd love to be able to hear more about that. On the Section 8, I'd love to, if you wouldn't mind, I'd love to talk with you about that and get some additional information. And that was really interesting what you were just saying. So if you don't mind, if Hannah can give you a quick card, would that be okay with you? Because I'd love to talk with you about that. No, thank you so much. It's very grateful. It's good to see you.
Great. I apologize for coming back to the microphone, and I appreciated your response on the homeowner insurance issue, but of course, flood insurance is separate from that and it's federally administered. So this neighborhood, this entire valley, is a prime example of communities where homeowners have not had to pay huge rates for flood insurance, but now are likely to get, to go from 645 to 6,250, that's real money. So I would really strongly urge you to work with Representative Huffman and figure out some part of how you can protect us from this, because we know we're going to get hit with homeowner raises, but that's inevitable. But to have that accompanied by skyrocketing flood insurance rates, that's going to affect a lot of people. And this neighborhood is a perfect example of one that's at risk. And thank you again for coming out here.
Cleve, I apologize. I did not mean to ignore your comment and your concern. I apologize about that. Absolutely hear you loud and clear in regards to how vulnerable community is, neighborhoods are, and definitely will follow up with Congressman Huffman on that. And again, I apologize about not addressing the concern that you advanced. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Brian Ledig. I am a resident of West County, and my base is out of Sebastopol. And they're building an 86 unit low-cost apartments there with no road improvement. And they say, well, we can't do anything because it's a state highway, or we can't do anything because it's a county road. And there's absolutely no coordination going on. There's going to be about 300 more car trips a day just from this one unit. And they're talking about putting another very large development just north of town. And so, but they say, well, we only have to study the first intersection. That's all we have to do. And there's nothing about the downstream of where all this traffic is. And I'm sure that Sebastopol is not the only community where this is happening, but you know, and their model is to build close to the road. So it's this old fashioned thing, but the traffic is backed up through town. So anyway, so thank you.
So I'm just going to jump in because I'm actually sort of a neighbor in this general area. And one thing that I think is important to note, and actually there's another neighbor who's going to, I think, bring this up later as well, is that the city of Sebastopol and the county of Sonoma actually worked on a joint active transportation plan grant to improve bicycle and pedestrian amenities in exactly that area. So it would be sort of, you know, Regal to the highway to Mill Station and kind of opening up improvements throughout the western side of town. That grant application has not been successful yet, but we continue to look for sort of funding opportunities. And I think that, you know, maybe the senator can speak to what opportunities there might be within Caltrans budget for improvements to the highways, which of course run through Sebastopol, and which you're talking about.
Oh, yeah. They put in, you know, they eliminated one of the lanes on Petaluma Avenue to put in the bike lane. And the most I've ever seen on that bike lane is one bike. I mean, this is the great, you know, fallacy is that people, are going to get out of their cars and they're going to use their bikes. No, they're not. That's not going to happen. That's a fantasy. You know, we're not in that society.
Well, I guess I live in Fantasyland because I actually bike with my entire family on those bike lanes on a regular basis. And I actually know of families who live in Grayton and utilize actually that same network and don't even have a car and do all of their shopping, and their children go to school in Sebastopol.
That's a very, very small percentage
growing
of all the.
And I think more of us would actually walk. And there's I believe some petitions maybe to present to the senator later for just, and if it is safe, people will be more likely to do it. I don't think that honestly, a lot of the bike lanes are safe. I think that what we need is actually class 1 divided bike lanes, where then think about the West County Trail. I mean, I've never been on the West County Trail where I'm the only person on the West County Trail. It's always a super highway, right? Of bicycles and pedestrians. And so I think we need more of that kind of a solution.
Right. And I think the West County Trail is great and people use that all the time. And I've used it a lot. But those aren't people going to work in the morning. Those aren't people, you know, that need to go to work every day. They're all in their cars, and it's, you know, it's backed up past Pacific Market. It's backed up past Pleasant Hill. And that's my area. And so I'm just saying, and they keep developing, and they say, well, we can't do anything because it's a county road. We can't do anything because it's a state highway. Is there some sort of a coordination going on besides more bike lanes?
Well, if it's a county road, you can always, you know, sort of talk to us, and we can look at whether there are opportunities for improvements. Absolutely. So happy to have that conversation. And I think the senator can speak on behalf of Caltrans and state highways and their processes.
Thanks.
So if there's and thank you for the question. Very grateful for that. So if there is a specific project that touches a state artery, that has to be part of the planning process. So for example, if there needs to be enhanced turn lanes, expanded sidewalks along the highway, class 1 pathways, et cetera, Caltrans would be part of that application process. It would have to actually be part of the approval as well. So if there's some specific areas where you think that coordination is not happening, would love to be able to hear them because Caltrans is at the table on those, but I would, if you feel that they're not, I'd love to hear about them, if that's all right.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, bypasses, we've talked about bypasses, Sebastopol's for as long as I've been up here.
Got it.
And there's some very natural ones that can be done.
Yeah.
So.
I see what you're saying in regards to not having that backup each and every morning, every evening, right? Coming into town.
Yeah.
And how that can be. I see. I apologize. Got it.
Thanks.
Okay. No, thank you so much. And I'm really grateful you're here. Thank you.
We're gonna go to a question online. Tracy?
We have a question from Dory that was submitted via question and answer. Dory is wondering if the board can consider legalizing composting toilets alongside new septic requirements to assist homeowners in lightening wastewater loads.
So I am very pleased to announce that we actually have already done this and we are moving forward with this. The biggest challenge right now is really the implementation. So while the full board of supervisors, I've always been the crazy composting toilet lady on the board, and I've been talking about this for as long as I've been on the board. And I'm proud to say that we now have a unanimous board majority in support of composting toilets. But right now, in my opinion, the devil is in the details. I think that the process is still very opaque and unclear for residents. And one of the challenges, not to get too far into the weeds, but is with respect to the water that comes through your sink, because that is actually classified as black water in county code. And so even if you're able to have a composting toilet for the toilet, you still do have another source that needs to be sort of treated in a different way. And so, what I really want to see happen, and I'm working with Permit Sonoma to make this happen, is like an FAQ or sort of a step-by-step guide for how to do this at home, and what some of those more creative opportunities are. I will also say that Regional Parks is also keenly interested in this solution, and I would love to talk to state parks about this as well, because we also have a huge need for, potential composting toilets out in recreational facilities for seasonal use. So yes, we are doing that, and I hope to have more information soon and would love to follow up on that.
Okay, go ahead here.
Adelante.
Buenas noches, yo soy Imelda Montaño y he vivido en esta área por más de 25 años.
Good evening. My name is Imelda Montaño and I've lived in this area for more than 25 years now.
Y solo me gustaría saber, yo estoy aquí representando a todos los latinos.
And what I'd like to know, I'm here to represent all the Latinos.
Y me gustaría saber si nosotros o cómo podemos saber nosotros toda la información, si podemos ser beneficiados, ya que están hablando de la renta de las viviendas.
And I'd like to know how we can go about getting all the information that we need in order to maybe benefit from it, since you've been talking about things like housing and rentals.
Y pues es todo. Muchas gracias por escucharme.
That's all. Thank you for your attention.
If it's possible, we would love to be able to get your phone number, and then you will get a call tomorrow from Donna Zapata in our office to be able to download all of the information so that you have it at your fingertips, and then also able to share it widely. And if that's okay with you, if Hannah could give you a phone number, and then if we could trade, if you can give Hannah your phone number, and then Donna will call you tomorrow morning, if that's okay with you. And thank you so much for allowing us to be here, and it's good to see you, and thank you for your question. I'll turn it over to the supervisor.
Thank you so much for being here. One thing I want to mention is that we are in the process of developing a translation policy at the County of Sonoma. And I really hope that we can do a better job, because I really believe that we have failed to meet the needs of Spanish speaking residents. And for instance, like I want to be able to have recordings of today's meeting, available in Spanish, make sure that all of our documents are in both English and Spanish. And so I hope that with this policy and with additional funding resources from the county, that we will have greater language justice and sort of equity of access in Sonoma County. But I want to say I'm sorry, because I feel like we have not done enough to date and we need to do more.
Yes, my name is Janice Gendro, and I need, Sebastopol needs your help. in getting funding for safe access to Rago Regional Park. Right now, there is like a 2-foot shoulder on one side, and on the other side are ditches. And people, this is a major recreational destination. And we have gone through all the process, had public meetings, we've had engineering reports done. And what we need now is the funding from Caltrans. So this is my letter asking you to help us to get that funding.
Yes, I'll take it from you right now. That's okay.
Hello, my name is Sean Trinella. I'm a trustee on the Annalee High School board. And I was excited to listen to some of the comments you had about school funding. And one of the questions I had was about transportation funding for schools. We had a situation last year where the bus schedule for Guerneville School and Annalee High School overlapped with one bus. And it caused a lot of high school students to be late. Oftentimes they wouldn't go to school because they'd wait for the bus, they'd get frustrated, they'd just walk home. And so my question is, in any of that funding that you're talking about, is any earmarked for transportation? And part of my question is because Annalee High School has a very large area that it services for high school. And you know, the number of students kind of diminishes as we go out to the coast, but they're no less important and they need to get to school. So that's my question. Thank you for taking it.
First of all, thank you so much for your work. I was honored to be able to sit on the Hillsburg School Board, and it is a tough job, and especially coming out of COVID. I just want to say thank you, and obviously to the classified and certificated staff. So earmark funding. So we have been very cautious about not earmarking funding that goes to K-12 public schools, or doing as little as possible. Reason being is that what we've heard from school districts is that the top-down approach doesn't work, and they want local control over funding. So here's where there is some earmark funding. It's not necessarily within the Prop 98 funding for the general fund, but there's significant enhancements in regards to just the basic dollars that are coming in. That would give some more flexibility. I want to be very clear, though, know that school districts are having to deal with needing to increase salaries, right? Deferred maintenance. I know there's a lot of pressures. There is specific earmark dollars to increase school bus driver salaries, because what we've seen across the state, and push back if you think I'm incorrect, it is incredibly challenging to be able to find school bus drivers. So we have provide supplemental funding for school districts to be able to increase school bus driver pay. Two, there is a very specific program of about $1.5 billion for new hybrid as well as electrified school buses. And happy to be able to connect you with the Air Board on that. We've been really successful on securing funding if you need additional school buses. I want to make if that would assist. And again, I am not trying to sound the same tune. Can I have Hannah give you a card, and then would love to follow up? And I am absolutely sincere in regards to saying thank you for your work on the board. And then can I just ask a follow-up question to Janice real quick? Is that okay? Hey, Janice, do we know, was this turned into Caltrans? I just a little bit of background. And it's just been rejected. Do you mind? Okay. That's great. Janice, we'll dig into it. I just want to get a little bit of background. There hasn't been a lot of love from Caltrans on this at all. Okay. All right. On it, we will follow up. Thank you for the follow-up. Yeah, please. Oh, yeah.
I just want to say thank you so much for attending the meeting today. I think that most people in this room know that I have not shied away from criticizing when I felt like the school district wasn't doing, the right by rural students. And so I just really appreciate you standing up for the needs of rural students and wanting to extend an invitation that we're not going to be able to solve the problem, but I know that in certain sort of school areas, we actually have been able to coordinate county transit buses in times that work for students. And so I don't know that it would meet that particular need, but it might meet another need that can then allow you to shift resources to ensure that that bus driver, is there for the more rural students. So I would just say, I would love to sit down, and I'm sure Johannes and Brian Albee are going to kill me for even suggesting this, but let's sit down and have a meeting with Sonoma County Transit and look at the sort of bus schedules, what you guys are funding, what we are doing, and if there's any way to kind of bring some synergy and additional resources to the area. So I would love to do that and follow up. And again, thank you so much for just speaking up for the students. So appreciate it.
So I would just like to say, actually on that note, Supervisor Hopkins, thank you. My kids, I live in Sebastopol. My name's Lynn Kelson. I live in Sebastopol. My kids go to school in Roanoke Park, and they're currently not paying to ride the bus to Roanoke Park. And so you are saving me $80 a month, and I'm very appreciative of that. And also Sonoma County Transit just opened up a bus line for the kids that live out in Sonoma Valley to come to Creo High School in Roanoke Park. So thank you very much. And to Senator McGuire, thank you for being here. And I also want to say that I'm a volunteer with the California Native Plant Society, and we have two major projects where we're working on taking out invasive ice plant on our coast. One is at Doran Regional Park. It's been incredibly successful. It's been going on for about 5 years, 5 to 7 years, I think. And they've had a lot of success. And look into it. We're doing great things there. We're improving. We just moved to a different section, and we're working to improve habitat for the snowy plover. The second project, which I am in charge of, is out at Bodega Head. So I would just like to, I've spent more time at Bodega Head than I have in the 20 years that I've been living here. We're working on invasive plants, but the more time that I've been out there, I see the poor trails. I see the poor and dangerous parking, which I think a lot of people know about. There's not enough signage. There's no dogs allowed out there, and there's very poor signage for that. There's poor signage for the memorial that is out there. And somebody brought to my attention that the whale signage that's out there is actually incorrect. So, and I would love to see some composting toilets out there, because the toilets out there are pretty atrocious. And it's an international destination. Sonoma County in general, Bodega Head specifically, every time I'm out there, there's people from all over the world. And it makes me sad that they are seeing the condition of our state parks as it is. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. And really grateful for your work and all the time that you were putting in. I think on the issue of funding on state parks, we've like in the village of Mendocino, the only public restrooms is at the state park there. And we were able to secure dollars outside of the state park system to be able to get those restrooms rebuilt. I think that what we'd love to be able to do is a very similar strategy, but we've seen deployed what we've done up in Humboldt as well as Mendocino. So if there are, would like to take a first strategy, right? So again, getting out and beyond the state park funding gap, we literally go work in the general fund to be able to get individual project dollars. So the restrooms up in the village of Mendocino was about $1 million. They are connected to traditional sewer system. We also did some art on it. I mean, it's right there in the downtown, but there are also less expensive options. We could work outside with advocates and or work with the superintendent and or with headquarters. So if y'all want to have us out to be able to come take a look at doing like a, for example, signage bathroom tour, which I know everybody will be really thrilled about. We'd love to be able to do that and then get some pricing, truly. And I would expect that a new, for example, composting restroom with a few stalls is going to be probably about $500,000 to $750,000. That's just rough because that's what we did up in Humboldt. So would love to be able to work on that and take a look at where some of the biggest challenges are. So if it's all right, I'm gonna give you a card and would love to be able to come take a look.
Thank you.
If that's cool with you.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's actually how it started both up at Prairie Creek as well in Mendocino. Really coming out and taking a look. Thank you. I'm really grateful you brought that up.
This is going to be our last person in this section, and then we're going to public comment on matters not on the agenda. So you're up.
My name is Bill Rupert. We live right over here, a couple of blocks away. And when we moved here into this area about the year 2000, we got nationwide insurance covering our home and 2 vehicles. And we've never filed a claim at all, ever. 2 weeks ago, we get a notice they're not renewing our homeowners. And I have a couple of brokers looking for insurance for us. And one of them said, well, I think we can find one if it doesn't cover fire. He said. And I said, how about if a herd of elephants came, would they cover that? But anyway, so they're right here in the valley, and I know there's several other people the same boat. One other comment is the state parks. I've been a volunteer with the state parks since we came 23 years ago, and the number of staff have declined drastically. This summer, I actually saw a ranger, and I don't think I'd seen a ranger in 10 years. And so they're just not there. And I thought there's a shortage of money, but I talked to somebody within that system and they said, yeah, there's plenty of money, but they're just not hiring. That's what they said. They said they're just totally incompetent or whatever for hiring people. So I don't know what the facts are, but anyway, when you're out there on the beach and you're supposed to be enforcing state laws and there's really no support. So that's all.
Bill, thank you for that. And I'll talk about rangers first. So look, each state parks district gets their own budget allotment. It is absolutely true that there is more money into the system. I'll be candid and give you my own editorial. It's not nearly enough. So there's a few items that we have changed to try to be able to expand the pool as well, is that no longer does a ranger have to strictly be a peace officer, right? Carry a gun to be able to expand the pool of applicants to be able to come into state parks. Yes, there are some hiring challenges, but where I remain deeply concerned is the ongoing state funding. And under Jerry Brown, who I think is going to go down in the history as one of our best governors, he didn't invest in state parks. We've seen under the Newsom administration more focus on state parks and additional ongoing funding. But again, we have cut the funding so terribly back in the recession, they've never been able to recover. And on the Sonoma coast, Mendocino coast, Humboldt coast, throughout the North Coast, these state parks have literally hundreds of millions of dollars in need. So that is a focus of ours each and every year because they're treasures to each of us, and they're also economic drivers for our communities. And I think someone said earlier, it is an unwelcome mat when you see the condition in which many of these state parks are in. I promise you we're going to continue to fight. And if there are specific projects that we can fund, we'd love to be able to work with you on, right? Whether it's enhanced signage, whether it's working on trails, restrooms, would love to be able to get a better understanding on what some of those projects are. Thank you. Lucy.
All right. Thank you. My name is Lucy Hardcastle. I'm an alternate for Forestville as a representative. Along with Greenville, Forestville also has a crosswalk sidewalk lighting project that's 95% complete in terms of its engineering and is now in front of Caltrans for approval. And as my residents in Forestville say, they've been waiting 20 years. They don't think it's ever going to happen. What can I tell them? How long should I tell them it takes for Caltrans to approve something that is going to be funded and is engineered already? Any clues for them?
So I was just briefly talking with the senator, and I think that he can probably give a nudge to Caltrans. As you know, that project is fully funded with local dollars. But I will say that in addition to Caltrans being, sort of a pause right now, my understanding is that we are also pausing that project as a request of the water district, which was going to be doing some work. Is that correct? Can someone confirm that, or was it the FPA? Anyone from my team? I don't know. Elise, do you know if that was correct? Was there a timeout requested for Forestville as a result of work that was going to be done by the water or sewer district? Okay, all right. We don't know what the resolution is, but I do know that there was a pause that was requested, I believe, for Forestville. So anyways, we'll look into that and we'll get back to you. But if Caltrans is the hiccup, I'm sure that the senator will follow up with the staff and see if they can nudge that along.
Okay. Be redoing the piping downtown. They would need to coordinate with.
Thank you.
In order to pull it off.
All right, thank you. So Vesta can confirm that her recollection was the same as mine, which was that right as we were like ready to sort of say we're going to move forward, the water district was like, hey, if you put those sidewalks in and they're really nice, we're actually just going to be tearing them back up because we have work to do on the pipes. And so it would actually make sense for them to do the work first and then for us to put in the nice new sidewalks so that they are not immediately torn up. And so it's frustrating, but it makes much more sense, sort of a dig once policy, right? To take that pause. So it might actually be that right now the hiccup is not so much with Caltrans, or it might be with Caltrans and the water district as opposed to Caltrans and the county, but we can look into that and get back to you.
One of the intriguing things about that is that that was in response to the housing element. They're thinking they need to put the pipes in order to take care of the housing element. So I don't know how much of an issue that really is.
It's all a mess.
That is. So does anyone have any comments on items that were not on the agenda? I think the agenda was kind of wide open, so maybe we got them all, but if there's something else you want to ask, feel free to step up to the podium and ask a question or make a comment.
I had a question about the update on the potential closing of our substation, sheriff substation in Guerneville. Is that happening, or do we have any word on that?
Great question. That is something that I have fought against every single year that I've been on the board. It's kind of been on the chopping block. Our new sheriff, Sheriff Ingram, actually is very committed to not shutting down that station and not sort of presenting that as part of a budget recommendation. And I am proactively working with him on a replacement for the structure itself. So our more recent concern wasn't so much a budgetary constraint, but it was the fact that the deputies were working under an asbestos riddled ceiling that was literally sort of covered with like duct tape and plastic sheeting. And so we are actively collaborating not only with the sheriff's office, but with the Department of Emergency Management and Sonoma County Fire District to look at a wholesale redevelopment project that would create a brand new sheriff substation, fire station, and potentially sort of community space and other office space for other county purposes. And actually, Brian with Praxis Architects, who was here earlier and made a comment and serves on the Citizens Advisory Group for wastewater, was actually selected by Sonoma County Public Infrastructure, excuse me, to actually draw up the plans so that we can then submit that for funding requests. And if the fire sales tax passes next March, there will be $15 million earmarked for a new fire station in Guerneville that would allow us to give a nice big down payment on that building. And then we could seek state and federal funds to move further with that. So does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
great.
And I did have one more question though. Sorry, I didn't identify myself. My name is Spartacus Mitchell. I'm a longtime resident of Guerneville. I wanted to ask about the trash pickup in downtown Guerneville. Our lovely Carrie, who's done this for us, is no longer with us. And I just want to know if if there's going to be funding to take care of it, or if you're working with somebody to help and get that taken care of.
Yeah, I'm guessing that most folks are aware, and I don't know if Senator McGuire is aware, but Curie Sorensen, just an amazing community leader who has taken care of downtown Guerneville and spent so many countless hours volunteering and finally being paid small amounts to keep our downtown clean, did pass away from a very aggressive cancer. His wife, my understanding, is currently obviously in the process of trying to prepare for the memorial. And so, you know, there's sort of a leave of absence right now, but does in the long run want to continue with the contract. And we are, you know, committed to continuing that funding. And we're just having conversations amongst our staff, you know, with what the next round is going to look like for Tourism Impact Fund to be able to continue that service. So in the meantime, we've had some different community volunteers pitch in, like during Lazy Bear weekend. And I don't know if Elise has any other updates. I know that's something that Elise has been working on from our office.
Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure she had help. Yeah.
Yeah. So she's going to be, and I think she actually already has hired someone to help her out. And Recology is also technically supposed to sort of do this work. And so it's been kind of a negotiation between Public Infrastructure, our office, and Recology, but having someone who is local and who loves the community and who is there all the time, I think is really the best service that we can provide. So Elise, any updates?
We have asked Recology to pick up the cans every Friday and every Monday for this month. And we have the funding for Sally's contract scheduled for the Board of Supervisors for September 26th. They do have to reapply every year and they hadn't applied. So we got that application in and those funds are now processing through our system.
Is there any chance for trailer ditch broke today? Just like,
Yeah, I saw that. I don't know how to repair a trailer. I can't.
yeah.
We have a question online.
Okay. I'm looking like I can speak.
Yeah, sorry, this is Suki Waters from Water Treks, and I hope you can hear me. I'm on the best internet connection I have since I got stuck in Jenner and wasn't able to attend in person. I have heard so many great questions and great responses concerning state parks. And I can't emphasize enough how important our coastline and our natural environments are. We're so blessed in Sonoma County to have such wonderful diversity of microclimates and, you know, life both on land and in the water. But we're having a huge problem on the state parks on the coast. And it's, again, it has to do with signage and kind of a disconnect between state parks and NOAA for the Greater Farallones National Marine Sanctuary. When COVID started, there was a moratorium on new people starting certain types of businesses, including kayak stuff. And yes, that needed to be released. But in the meantime, we have businesses that started up that are not getting the permits they were supposed to get through state parks. And it's highly impacting businesses like mine that actually have certified lifeguards and stuff and do most of our rescues with the general public. And with these people who are coming in and not getting their permits, not additionally insuring state parks, and causing a lot more grief and work for us who are following standards. Now, they did drop some of the, you know, not being pushy for us people that are additionally insuring and stuff, but I would love to see that reinstituted so that we're all online and making sure that our visitors to our coastline are both safe as possible. There's no such thing as a safe outdoor activity, but as safe as possible. We do our interpretation so our people know before they go, so they don't accidentally get flushed into the Pacific Ocean. But because of the lack of signage, most of our preventative rescues are with private paddlers and with the scalping people coming in trying to wreck kayaks without going through the proper measures. And I will contact, I'm looking forward to meeting our new district supervisor, but there isn't anything better for our communities than to have our community members involved in caring for our environment.
I'm sorry, your time is up.
Was just, Suki, thank you so much for your comments. And look, I don't want to sound like a broken record. Y'all deserve better. What the supervisor and I were just talking about is what we should probably do is here sometime in September, we spend a few hours together taking a look at some of the biggest challenges in regards to signage, infrastructure, et cetera. And then obviously working with the district and taking a look at some of the most critical needs, right? And so that is a follow-up. I will commit to you here today to be able to go take a look at some of the most critical needs, whether it's issues of restrooms, ongoing challenges in regards to infrastructure, signage. We'll do that, and then we'll tag team if that's appropriate with the supervisor, and we'll go do that together, if that's all right with folks, and we'd be happy to report back. Because hear that there is some intense frustration for lack of attention and lack of action on some of the critical projects, and candidly, it's probably some simple things that we could do as far as investing some funds to be able to fix. So we will do that here sometime in September, if that works for folks.
Can you add invasive plants to that list of infrastructure and failing?
Funding for when it comes to removing of invasive, and then
Looking at that as a major issue on our coast and our highways.
Got it.
Specifically in Bodega.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, very good. Thank you. Anything you want to say on that, Supervisor?
I think with that, we are done. Thank you all for coming tonight. It was I thought a very great back and forth. I hope some issues were heard, and hopefully they will get resolved. Can I get a motion to adjourn? 1, 2.
Motion from Zoom.
Oh, I thought that was Lisa. I'm like, you can't motion. Do we need a roll call? Okay, all right. Thank you, everyone.
Good night.